Happy holidays, everybody, and welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, a sports ethos presentation hosted by me. How you doing, everybody? Today, we're going to go through all 30 teams. We're going to focus on main storylines, must adds, drops, potential streamers, buys, sells, you name it. We'll talk a little bit about Jalen Suggs. He didn't finish last game with the ankle injury. We'll talk about Tari Eason, see if anything's going on there with his left leg, game off, and then Zach LaVine trade rumors, Josh Giddey stuff. This isn't very big news, but there's a lot going on in the box scores themselves. So we'll have a fun time breaking all of that down. Also, shout out to the folks that went with me to the Kings game last night. We had a great time taking some folks that work with the company out, and we had a blast. And I hope you guys are out there having a blast with all of your friends and family during this holiday season. Also, before I get into all the good stuff here, check out there's a B150 release that we put out this week. And it's got all of the updates from the first third of the season. It'll probably be relevant for another week or so. It was a blast. It was actually really, really cool putting that together. And between the preseason intel that takes about 400 hours to put together, and then having data from the first third of the season, all of the projections and all of the intel and all of the analysis, I think it's really, really sharp, and it's something you can actually hang your hat on because we now know what we didn't know during the preseason, and so things get pretty easy to project out. So I think if you use that list in comparison to other stuff that you're seeing out there, or even just sort of the general perception of players, you're going to get a lot of mileage on it, whether it's trades or kind of projecting how your season's going to go. You're going to love it. The other big piece of news that we announced this week is that we released a free app. So if you want to get out of the social media hullabaloo, if you want to just get the straight dope and get the news and not have to kind of sift through whether it's the For You tab or if you've just got a ton of people that you follow and just trying to figure out what's what and get to the point real quick, check out the app, and the links for all this stuff are in the show notes. They're also all over our Twitter feeds at Ethos Fantasy NBA. Some tools are built into the app, and we're going to be adding to this thing on a weekly, monthly basis. So definitely send us your what you guys want to see, any feedback, likes, dislikes, and that goes for everything, including this show. We want to hear from you guys a lot more as we head into 2025 because this is for you guys. We're building this company out to create a sustainable platform, so things like the fantasy basketball industry can continue to grow instead of contract, as we've seen sort of over the last couple of years. So send us that feedback. We got a lot of good momentum right now. We got a lot of good people working on this project, and we will be able to implement said feedback and continue to make things better here at sportsethos.com. Okay, let's say hi to our sponsor real quick. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action, the ability to watch the games live as they happen with the largest selection of odds on everything from football to NBA to college basketball, NHL, and UFC. Head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use the promo code BLEAV for a welcome bonus on the first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Okay, all right. Hanging out with some long-suffering Kings fans in the middle of a game they're losing to the Lakers, that can do some damage to the soul and or liver. So shout out again, guys, for the fun night. And sorry that your team sucks. I hate to say it, but it's kind of true. We'll talk about them in a second. I'll sweeten that piece up in a quick second here. Let's start off with some of the action tonight. We got Charlotte at Philly and Milwaukee at Cleveland and OKC at Miami. So a little bit of an odd slate here. Some odd ducks. We got LaMelo Ball out for this game on rest. We got Brandon Miller out in this game as well. Mark Williams out on the back-to-back. So we're going to get a real big snapshot here into what's happening with Nick Richards. I think from a fantasy relevance standpoint, that's the guy that kind of stands out to me right now as the loser in the Mark Williams is returning sweepstakes. But it's only been a couple games, so we don't know if that's actually going to hold up. I think he actually plays better with LaMelo Ball in the lineup, but, beggars can't be choosers here. If Nick Richards can't get a good line together, it's going to put him into the drop discussion in a lot of shallow formats, even intermediate formats. I would think Nick Richards might start getting dropped because Nick Richards hasn't had a ton of success this year. He's had 12 games. It's been successful, but the last couple of games have dropped him to a top 140 value on the season. So, all things told, it looks like kind of Nick Richards from previous seasons, though this is the dip. If you're going to buy into Nick Richards, now's the time to buy. He profiles as a player that'll stay healthy compared to Mark Williams. And of course, Mark Williams is out tonight, highlighting how kind of tenuous his grasp on value is. Now, Mark Williams has been pretty good lately. So if you took the plunge and you tried to grab Mark Williams either upon the news of him returning or even a week or so in advance, as it tends to be the case, you got to feel pretty good. He's been in there. He's been putting up numbers in the limited run that he's got, and that's really all. That was the reason that you dealt with this in the first place, is he might have top 75 value in him, and they sort of thrust him right back into the starting lineup, so he's got the role as well. So that's what we'll be watching out for there. Can Cody Martin have a big line? I think it's worth a look. He's been at least a little bit noisy in the box score lately. Miles Bridges is back. How will his efficiency handle not having his teammates there? And where'd it go? Micic. If Micic is going to have some big game, it's probably going to be in this one here. You're hoping to get like 8 or 10 assists, and not too bad everywhere else, but definitely worth a look, and assists are hard to find. So give him a look if you're looking at streaming. As far as the Philly side of the line goes, Joel Embiid is questionable. That news will probably come out either on air or here soon, so we'll keep an eye out for that. Obviously, that shifts everything. But beyond that, we want to see, can Paul George keep his foot on the gas? I think he's one of the better buy lows that was highlighted in the B150. I'd say there was probably about 10 buy lows in the B150 that I just felt like massive gainers, like 50 slots of ranks, 75 slots of ranks, guys that you could really just know that when you buy, maybe you don't get the whole enchilada there. Shout out to the restaurant here in Sacramento for their enchiladas last night. I know I don't remember their names, so it's not really helping them out very much, but I digress. The enchilada for Paul George is, he could be a top 25 guy if it all pans out. But being rated as a top 75 guy, heading into the quasi break, I think people really did have questions. Could he actually produce? And, 2 hyperextensions, so much red flag, so much risk, and then a couple good games to show you what he could do. I think Paul George, if you want to get in on that, now's the time. This is probably the last time, and you could probably get him for something like a top 50, top 75 price. Maybe not 75, but top 50. I feel like that's probably the sweet spot there. If you can maybe make that top 50 you're sending out a little bit risky as well, I think that might actually look good at the end of the day. Elsewhere within the box score, Andre Drummond's a potential stream, though he hasn't gotten it going at all this season. If Joel Embiid, as I try to learn that man's name, if he doesn't play, take a look there. Kelly Oubre's been on a nice little heater lately, so keep an eye on him. And then Tyrese Maxey, can he be more of a top 20 guy this season than a top 30 guy this season? That's really what I would like to see for him the rest of the way. He's got the talent. Can he stay healthy? And then can he stay healthy is basically the concern there. As for the next game on the slate, we got Milwaukee at Cleveland. Lillard taking a game off. I don't know if that's strategic. It might be, maybe not. Just trying to get a game off on the front side of the back-to-back. Giannis probable. Chris Middleton probable. Middleton's been really bad as far as reality basketball goes. In terms of fantasy basketball, not too bad. Top 150 in his 4 games this season. So, and he's doing that on 25% shooting, guys. I feel bad for the guy, and I feel bad for the Bucks fans. That deal never should have been made. However many years ago they made it, that kind of led to the position that they're in now. But as I was talking with Rick Campbell on the show last time, the Bucks have turned it around, and they survived, and they're on their way to the postseason discussion. And how they do the last 2/3 of the season will largely determine how they do in the end. But recovering after such a terrible start, that shows a lot of fortitude. This team looks like they want to play for each other. Giannis, it looks like he's lacking respect and taking that out on opponents accordingly. So good stuff there. But with Lillard out, look for Brook Lopez to have a big game. Bobby Portis, he's got to get on the board at some point in time, in a meaningful way. He's sort of snuck into top 140 value in a 9-cat league with a 1.2 turnover mark. So I don't know if that's useful for a lot of people in most standard formats. And these games where somebody like Lillard's not playing, if he can't get in there and do it in those games, I think you just kind of got to put him on the waiver wire and not really think about it too much. Gary Trent, can he be a thing? They need a scorer. And if you're looking to reach down into the depths of the non-producers, he could be a guy. AJ Green could be a guy. Check them out for your DFS lineups. And I'm thinking most sharps are probably already over that action if I could talk. And we carry on to the Cleveland side. Cleveland, Evan Mobley, somebody that we got a lot of in the preseason. I think we were out ahead in the B150 basically without looking the rank up. I believe Mobley was at his current production of 17 in 9-cat leagues. So personally, just kind of invested there. So I'll be watching to see what he can do there. They're at more or less full strength. Isaac Okoro not playing. He's out for a couple weeks. So that's one less mouth to feed, though, with Max Strus, questionable. That sort of cancels itself out. And I just want to see what Strus is going to do to this team. There's no surprises with Cleveland. I can tell you all about how they're doing, and I do that kind of almost every show. They're all in the early rounds. And what will Strus do? And I knew Andre was going to chime in. I'm surprised I didn't get a Joel in the private chat. It's Isaac Okoro. Okoro, everybody. Okoro. Max Strus, though. I want to just see, does he take some of the value away from like Garland and Allen and Karis LeVert's been sliding a little bit and dealing with injuries. So top 125 for Karis LeVert on the season now, whereas about 2-3 weeks ago it was about top 90. He was useful then, not useful now. Ty Jerome's completely fallen off the radar. So and that's without Strus back. So I just want to see though, what does he do to like Garland? What does he do to Allen? Does he even impact Mobley? I don't think he's going to impact Donovan Mitchell. And I do think at some point in time, Donovan Mitchell decides the ball is his and he's going to take it and kind of return back to more of a top 15 position. I think he just wanted to get his teammates involved early in the season. Okay, let's get to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are awesome. Not much to say here. This team is pretty well understood. Cason Wallace might not be worth the headache of having a lot of his value consolidated in the steals stats, but he's been good while Chet Holmgren's been out. Shea, Jalen, everybody, Isaiah Hartenstein, they're all locked and loaded, ready to go. Miami, I don't know if they really factor into this discussion as far as who can stop who. Nobody can stop the Oklahoma City Thunder except for the Milwaukee Bucks in the Cup. But not a lot to go there. I don't want to waste a ton of time on these guys. Let's get to Miami. With Miami, it's interesting. You got the Jimmy Butler stuff going on. What are the odds that Jimmy Butler's gone? I don't know. 50%? 60? 70? It feels like it's in that range. Say like 50 to 70%. Okay, so what do we do with that? Tyler Hero, top 30 on the season. Well, can Tyler Hero be, say, top 25 without the downside risk? Tyler Hero right now, 47% shooting on the season, 87.5% from the line. We could expect him to shoot like 45%, but 47.5, that's high, right? So what does that look like for Tyler Hero when the dip hits? And it always hits. That looks like top 40, top 50. So can Tyler Hero in a post-Jimmy Butler scenario where Miami brings back maybe, Bradley Beal? It's hard to understand what the Miami motivation is here, or the pivot. What's the pivot going to look like for them? Like, what are they really trying to accomplish moving on from Jimmy Butler? Grab a pick, you don't care. What's the motivation here? Anyway, if Jimmy goes out and nothing comes back in, guys like Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, they're going to see their numbers either lose the downside or maybe even go up a bit. I don't think up a bit, we should put too much weight into that. But the downside, I think, is that protection is really good because neither of these guys I'm super comfortable with. Tyler Hero's games played log is terrible. Bam Adebayo, I just am generally a non-believer. But without Jimmy, I think you can probably get a little extra value if you're looking to try to make an acquisition or if you're projecting this out and you're like, okay, are these guys going to continue doing what they're doing? In the case of Tyler Hero, I think the numbers come down a little bit, but then it's an undisputed case of him being the primary playmaker and scorer. So that's what's interesting to me there. If you're looking down the roster, you're always looking at a guy like Duncan Robinson. And hey, maybe Duncan Robinson gets consistent after that kind of a move. I don't like projecting that the Heat are going to be better without Jimmy Butler. I think efficiency and then the nature and tone of their season, these are real risks for the rest of these guys. But for example, a guy like Terry Rozier, who's currently ranked 190 in 9-cat leagues, not a lot of love out there for Terry Rozier. I think you could probably have him for a song. Can Terry Rozier come in and step up and actually be super valuable? He's got a history of doing this for bad teams, being a top 50 guy. Now I have questions about his foot. I don't know if he's going to make that pivot. I don't know if he's got it in him this year, but I'm going to be watching out for that. And I would try to get my hands on Terry Rozier here in the next couple weeks. if you can do it as a part of another deal or you could do it as just a small deal. I mean, you don't deal anything of value for him, maybe a late round guy, and just see if you can catch another GM sleeping. Okay, let's get out of the Friday games and into the Saturday action. We've got a rebound game of the Lakers at the Kings. Whoo boy, if the Lakers win in Sacramento on Saturday, the world will end in Sacramento. I don't know. They're already all over Mike Brown. It's not Mike Brown's fault. None of this is Mike Brown's fault, guys. I mean, even for me, and I'm like shouting at the top of the mountaintop that they need to play Keon Ellis. The poor people sitting next to me in all sides of the section that I sat last night had to hear about Keon Ellis for way too much. But even if they played them, that's not solving the issues that Sacramento has, which is largely you have no rim protection. And it was interesting to see De'Aaron Fox go out on Draymond Green's podcast. And, as Draymond kind of tends to do with guys, he gets them to be super honest. And when he's asked about Mike Brown, he defends Mike Brown because, of course, Mike Brown knows how to coach and he's pushing generally the right buttons over the long haul in Sacramento, but he just casually mentions like, we don't have any rim protection and therefore we kind of need to be perfect. And it's the thing that I've been talking about for a couple of years now is they've got to be perfect defensively. They need a rim protecting 3-point shooting big man. So go out and get Jay Huff, Sacramento. But absent all of that, they're really finding that the insistence upon playing guys like Kevin Huerter, bringing in DeMar DeRozan, it's just not working out, and they're getting exposed. Whenever Keon's not on the floor, their defense falls apart, and they don't play Keon enough. And of course, when you have a guy like Anthony Davis on the other side, they got no answer for him. So looking ahead to that game, will Anthony Davis have another monster game? It's very possible. Can LeBron start to get into a rhythm? Austin Reeves had a big game. That bounce back in the buy low for Austin Reeves might have been slammed shut in this game last night. Austin Reeves is a guy that has late, early round, I don't even want to call it potential. I almost think it's likelihood. So a lot of people treating Austin Reeves as a late round guy lately. If you were able to get Austin Reeves in a deal, I want to hear about it. Let me know what you got, what you spent, all that stuff. I want to hear all about it because I really think he could be a difference maker down the stretch. And then that's only assuming that Anthony Davis and LeBron James stay healthy. So let me know your Austin Reeves stories out there. And then on the Sacramento side, they will play like, their kind of season depends on it. So expect a big outing there. The only problem is they just had that this last night. I thought their effort was just fine. They're a little bit banged up. That doesn't bode well for them. Domantas Sabonis looked okay. He didn't look like a lot of the injuries that have hit him lately were affecting his play on the floor. Keegan Murray looked okay. So I think they'll all play. I think they'll be at 80, 90%. But, if you're looking for Kevin Huerter to come up and be a waiver wire guy, or even Keon, Keon Ellis is basically around the top 150 despite not being played a lot this season. 160 in 9 cat leagues in 21 minutes per game. So obviously if he gets big minutes, then that's big fantasy value, and especially if they start to actually utilize him on offense. But there's nothing cooking here from a fantasy perspective. There's no action. You can't take Keon Ellis and put him into the lineup and have any confidence that this is going to be the game, because you just never know, because they might not play the guy. We got Kyrie Irving news. Oh, the private chat's great. The Kyrie Irving news, he's practicing Friday, so that seems like a good sign. So Kyrie Irving, a durable Kyrie Irving is a force in fantasy leagues, and so we will be, oh yeah, that's great. We will be watching for Kyrie Irving. He's been a nice little pickup for us here at sportsethos.com. All right, let's get out of this game. And Miami at Orlando. So we're going to look here at the Orlando side. Goga, looking good. Jalen Suggs, that ankle issue and just his health in general. He plays so hard. He's one of the hardest. Like, imagine that guy on the New York Knicks. I bet you Tom Thibodeau imagines that every night. Jalen Suggs not being active, to me, says Anthony Black should be on somebody's roster in somebody's league. And I don't think you're going to expect the world out of him, but you should expect him to be good in at least like 2 or 3 categories in a given game. If those categories that he's generally good in line up with what you need, Anthony Black is kind of an auto play, depending on your roster situation, of course. But really, I'm looking at the Goga and Wendell Carter stuff. Wendell Carter finally had a good game. No positional changes. Everything's sort of kind of status quo there. if Wendell Carter was sandbagging it, for lack of a better term, if this finally, the health and the wind and everything basketball related clicked in, then is that marking the beginning of a pivot to go back to what we've seen in the past? I would shed a tear because Goga at top 75 value on the season in 23.7 minutes per game. That's been great. I mean, that's a actual needle moving pickup that folks that were on top of it early on. That's really a big deal, and we're just gonna have to wait and see. I tend to think that Goga has shown enough that he's going to be able to hold off Wendell Carter Jr. But if Wendell Carter Jr. strings together like 2 or 3 good games, it does put a decision in play. And then, of course, you do have Paolo Banchero coming back soon. That will be the ultimate decision maker for this thing. And so we'll just wait and watch. And does that make Goga a bit of a sell high guy right now? It does. So get out there, see what you can do. It's a little uncomfortable selling a top one or probably top 75 player when it kind of feels like he's going to do this the rest of the way, but there is this risk that if you want to pass this risk off, you can right now. Tristan da Silva got a little bit noisy in the last game, and then even the game before that. It's not altogether good fantasy value, but it's definitely worth a look if you need to put a warm body in the lineup. It wouldn't be surprising if John Isaac gets in there and has a decent little game, but that's that's a lot of risk right there for John Isaac. You just don't know if he's going to play a lot or not. So yeah, get him if you want him in Orlando. In Memphis at Atlanta, the Memphis squad, they got going again in their last game. Santi Aldama got going again. He's at a top 65 value on the season. Jaren Jackson's a top 10 guy on the season. So where was that last season, Jaren Jackson? And just a walking, talking lesson in efficiency and doing less is more. Good job, Jaren Jackson. John Morant, questionable. Jay Huff, questionable. Marcus Smart, questionable. Memphis just kind of rolling along, not too much disaster, but a little bit of disaster. Desmond Bain still just, we got to get like 5 straight good old Desmond Bain games to be able to, get this massive red flag off of him. He's a top 100 value on the season, just not doing a lot, not playing a lot, shots just not there. 12 field goals a game. Something's not right. It's probably the foot. And that's really unfortunate because otherwise, all things considered, he's a really good player. Zach Edey, top 130 on the season. That's impressive, actually. 20 minutes per game. The Jay Huff injury stuff has sort of helped him out in this ramp back up. I do tend to think that Jay Huff will come back and play his 15 minutes per game no matter what. Edey at top 130 this early in the season. Yeah, he's been out. He's only played 16 games, so it hasn't been perfect. A lot of people speculatively grabbed Zach Edey super early in drafts. Like we're talking 50, 60, 70. I think probably more normally like 80, 90. And so Edey getting to this number, and if he keeps improving, he keeps climbing the ladder, if he could get to 25 minutes per game somehow, then you start to see the value that people were hoping for on draft day. Otherwise, it was an over-aggressive grab, but, you get it. People want to take a chance, and that's fine. Brandon Clark just kind of, putzing along, doing, the Brandon Clark thing in starters minutes. The bottom of the rotation, LaRavia, some of these guys have actually been productive lately, but by and large, it kind of feels like it finally shook out for Memphis that not everybody on the team could have fantasy value at once, which was the case in the first month of the season. So guys like LaRavia, Huff hasn't been good in terms of fantasy. Scottie Pippen Jr. non-existent. Marcus Smart really, smoke and mirrors there. Jalen Wells, even though he was getting a lot of minutes early on and kind of putting up scoring numbers, nothing cooking there. All right, that's your Memphis update. Let's get into Atlanta here. Atlanta. Good news, Jalen Johnson just keeps rolling. Onyeka Okongwu's got another week or so out. We saw a Larry Nance Jr. sighting in the last game with a big line. That's probably going to continue. I mean, Larry Nance Jr. is built for these kinds of moments. Back in the day, probably 3-4 years ago, he was a guaranteed top 100 value. And that's what he's this season in his 17.8 minutes per game. Lots of injury risk there. You get Larry Nance and you just kind of ride that until the ride ends, and it's not, you don't drop anybody of value to get him. Clint Capella, he's going to enjoy a little bit more safety here in the next coming days. I don't think this really affects people down chain too much. DeAndre Hunter still having a great season, top 80 value on the year. He's got 20 points per game. 3 triples, not hurting you anywhere with percentages. In fact, helping you with percentages, and really could have been had for a song on draft day. This Hunter stuff is interesting in the sense that it's the thing that threatens even like a Dyson Daniels. Dyson Daniels, top 35 value, starting to come back with that steals number 2.9 per game now. If you get a Hunter that's doing well and you get a Bogdanovich that's doing well, it does seem very likely that Dyson Daniels would take a hit in that case. Trae Young starting to slowly climb the ranks, 39% shooting on the season, 4.6 turnovers. So in 9-cat formats, that's a big mess, but you're probably not caring about the turnovers. You might not even be caring about the field goal percentage for that matter. So Trae Young, depending upon your build, Trae Young's either having a good or a bad season, and can definitely stand to score more. He's going to have to shoot more, and he's going to have to make more. And that's probably coming. I mean, that's his MO. Let's get out of Atlanta, and let's head on over to Utah. We got Utah at Brooklyn here. Real battle of the winners. You got the John Collins show is continuing. So happy that we were ahead on John Collins, because I had this, actually I've lost on John Collins for like 2 or 3 seasons, and to see him actually do the thing where it's never been like John Collins is the man. John Collins is definitely going to be good. It's just like John Collins doesn't suck that bad, and he's way undervalued. And then each season he would actually suck that bad and be overvalued. And this time he's actually back to Atlanta John Collins, top 30 value. And again, they want to move him, and that's going to be good for his ultimately good for his fantasy value. It probably won't be profiled as a top 30 guy wherever he lands, but he'll probably go back to being a top 100 guy. Yeah, you take a hit, but it's baked into the cake. Can John Collins finish in the top 50 this season? Absolutely. And that's great. I don't even think people right now think that John Collins is going to do that. So there's some value baked into that cake right there. Walker Kessler, top 30 value, again, a year late. It's the old post-hype All-Stars. Shout out Greg Rosenthal for that one. Lauri Markkanen, top 65. I want to see if Lauri Markkanen can actually have a good middle third of the season. And if you get any of that happening, I think you take Lauri Markkanen and you just package him for whatever you can out there. And because that last third of the season is going to be bad. We got a Colin Sexton game in the last one. So again, I think I explained it this way in a recent show. He's got a history of being a top 75 player. The odds that this happened are probably like a third, 25% to 33%. But there's a history there, and we might be starting to see it. Keontae George has had a couple big poppy games lately. The equation's the same with him. I'm just watching to see, can they move him off the ball, and can that change the dynamic of his game? Can that increase his field goal percentage? Because if you could come up with a hybrid option for Keontae where he's on the ball just a handful of time, the ball is going to find its way to him. And if he's still an effective scorer, in that context, it might take the big, nasty 39.4% on 14 attempts out of his fantasy stat set. And he's already got defensive limitations in the stat set. So you need to have one good thing happen for Keontae George. But there's a good player in there. We just got to find it. And I don't know if it's helping too many people unless your build supports it right now. Let's get into the grab bag. That's the Brooklyn Nets. Cam Johnson's doing great things. I think everybody loves Cam Johnson right now. That's great. Another guy that we've been invested in the past. So it's good to see that actually pan out. What that happens and where that happens. He's the most obvious sell high in fantasy basketball right now. Could he just continue to do it? Sure. But let's see how long he lasts before the trade deadline, which incidentally is about 5 weeks away. So, I mean, you're really kind of last chance for selling on Cam Johnson right now. Dorian Finney-Smith is your safe play right now as this team chunks along, and who knows what the rotation is going to look like. It seems like there's going to be a different guy that does well every night. That's not good for fantasy value. Nick Claxton, top 100 on the season and probable for this game. I think it's now or never for him to take this kind of leadership role for this team in terms of usage and just settling into the vision that they had for him in the first place. If this is going to happen, I think it's got to happen in the next few weeks here. Otherwise, it just screams lost season. And maybe he'll be good in the last third of the season because he's been bad in the first 2/3, and they want to have something of a successful year. But the odds get bad as you keep going, and he's not good. Day'Ron Sharp is worth keeping an eye on. Clowney's worth keeping an eye on. Watford is injured, so he's not worth keeping an eye on. Shake Milton, he had a decent little game, and Ben Simmons had a better game. I actually have Ben Simmons on a fantasy team. I repeat, I have Ben Simmons on a fantasy team. Like, I feel like I'm at a 12-step meeting or something. I've Ben freaking Simmons on a fantasy team. That's hilarious. Shake Milton, though, that's the player that I would like to do better between the two because we know Ben Simmons is just going to get hurt and that's not going to be good for anything. So how long can you count on Ben Simmons to be somewhat good? He's not great, but somewhat good in the categories you need him to be good in. That's just an open question. But if Shake Milton can actually get the ball and they kind of coalesce around him and say, okay, Shake, we're going to ride whatever you got cooking for the rest of the season. Now that's actually something that could translate into longer term value. So when I'm taking shots, in deep leagues and trying to figure out who out of this mess I should be adding, Shake Milton's kind of close to the top of the list, as is Keon Johnson, though we haven't really seen too much lately. He's had some runs where he was actually useful. So Keon Johnson, I probably, if I had to rank these guys, I'd go something like, excluding Claxton, excluding DFS, I'd probably go something like maybe Milton, Clowney, Simmons. This is like long-term stuff. Maybe even like Jalen Wilson, probably Keon Johnson. I go over Jalen Wilson and Sharp. I would actually probably try to get in there before maybe even Jalen Wilson, because Sharp in the past has been a guy that's been interesting. But again, just so much grab bag stuff going on here. Let's get out of that. That's a very messy situation I don't want to talk about. And let's go to the super stable New York Knicks, that there is absolutely nothing to talk about except for Josh Hart being questionable. We don't need to know anything about these teams. I could get into the details of where I think like OG and Mikhail and which directions they're going to trend, but it's the wiggle here is a couple rounds at best. It was good to see Mikal Bridges have a better night in his last game. He's top 80 now on the season, maybe a little bit of a buy low. So there's your New York Knicks take right there. Let's get out of that and onto the New Orleans side of that game, which is much more spicy. And they might really struggle in this game. So I don't know that this is the game that's going to break, the New Orleans Pelicans into some sort of, supersonic status. But they've all been good for fantasy purposes. Trey Murphy, top 60 on the season, getting that field goal percentage into the right place, 43%, 87.5 from the line, 2.8 threes per game. I think the key with Trey is that he's only got 15 games under his belt. I think he's going to continue to get better and better as the year goes on. But he really is looking like, if not the number one scorer on this team. And I say that a little lightly because you got guys like CJ McCollum and you got guys like DeJounte Murray. But when they're on the floor and they need a shot, and CJ's got a good defender on him, and CJ can't just shake and take some of his shots where he's just going to shoot him no matter how close the guy is to him. He's an old savvy vet. He can kind of get these shots off at will. They go to Trey, and it's because he's got that athletic, ability to get loose. And unlike DeJounte Murray, where he's a little bit questionable with the shot itself, Trey Murphy can shoot the rock. So I'm just all the way intrigued with a lot of these players because each of them seems to be a buy low right now. Everybody's waiting for the Brandon Ingram stuff to hit, and they're not really giving the Ingram situation enough credit for the potential that he might never play in New Orleans ever again. I don't think they like him. I don't think that in New Orleans they want him there. So that trade or whatever, if he doesn't get traded, it just doesn't seem like he's long for New Orleans. So I think people are waiting Ingram as coming back as a given, as a guarantee, and that he's going to get all the shots and minutes. And maybe he does, but there's enough shots to go around here. So Trey, DeJounte, CJ McCollum, all these guys are way behind what they should be producing at. So their ranks are down. That's buy low all over it. Even CJ McCollum, who I'm generally not a fan of in the fantasy context, he's got a good situation right now. It's about as good as it gets. And yeah, they might trade him to Milwaukee and whatever, but I don't even think people think CJ McCollum is valuable. He's probably got more name value. He might be the guy that you can't get a buy low off for in this group. Herbert Jones, top 115, having weird stat lines now. He's got 10 games under his belt. This weird stat line production for Herbert Jones, that's quite literally what he's known for. And he actually will stabilize all of that this season because he will have a consistent role. They're asking him to do offensive stuff. And so, again, a buy low. Brandon Boston, a little bit slow one in the last one. I would advise people to just evaluate him as a late-round guy going forward and not worry about it. Yves Missi, late-round guy going forward with some upside beyond that if he actually can figure it out, miss the rookie wall, and keep on going, and maybe get some junky games in there where those steals and blocks come in a little bit greater volume. Okay, let's get out of New Orleans, unless you want to have a conversation about Zion, and I know you don't. Let's see, where are we at here? Oh, hey, you guys enjoying the show? If you are, watching on YouTube, drop a thumbs up on this video. And if you're tuning in on Twitter, give us a follow at Ethos Fantasy NBA. And if you're listening on the pod feed, we'd love a 5-star review. We appreciate you guys. I mean, this is the lifeblood of our organization right now. The algorithm game apparently is where you got to play, and so when you guys do that, I'm more interested in the feedback than anything. If you guys can tell us what you guys would like us to buy, what would you guys like us to do here? What would you like us to add? How can we improve ourselves? It's all about improvement, and so we appreciate your feedback. Let's get into the Washington at Milwaukee game. So we've talked about Milwaukee, so we'll go ahead and just talk about Washington now. If I could get them up on screen here. Washington, the Malcolm Brogdon experience is back upon us, and that's going to unfortunately slow the roll on the Bub Carrington show a little bit. I'm not fully invested in that, but I do think that Carrington is the one player going these days where it feels like he could either be overvalued, fantasy deficient mess where he gets a lot of stats, but that field goal percentage is bad and there's other holes in the game and there's been some inconsistencies in there, or he could be just awesome because, these games turn into little pinball games where they, steals and blocks are just hanging out for everybody. And why I think that is you got Jordan Poole out there. He's got 1.7 steals per game, 0.5 blocks per game. I mean, he doesn't have to do that. It's not guaranteed that he's going to get those kinds of numbers, but I think the games are so junky that's possible. You also have other players that create deflections. You got Justin Champagnie in the rotation now, and he's been fine. He's still cooking at top 75. What a great find. Hopefully that can keep going for folks. 1.4 steals, 0.6 blocks. Bilal Koulibaly, 1.5 steals, 0.8 blocks. So steals and blocks beget steals and blocks, and that's why I'm very interested in Carrington down the stretch, even though he's got a 38.4% field goal percentage on the season, 0.9 steals, 0.3 blocks. They're not there yet, but we've seen these little shock games where they come out. So it's like, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But top 215 on the season for Carrington in 29 minutes per game, that's not paying the bills. But I mean, maybe in a build that's good for it, it is. Brogdon, of course, is here to mess it all up for folks. It'll last for a week or two tops. I mean, there'll be talk about trading Malcolm Brogdon to a contender, and the contenders don't probably want him. And then who knows how it goes for the last third of the season. I could see Washington playing Brogdon all the way if he somehow stayed healthy. That's a very Washington thing to do. Alexander Sarr is just going to kind of cook, and then and cook by cook, I mean late round value. And then Jonas Valanciunas is out the door. He didn't even rent. He's probably just staying in a hotel. Let's get out of that game. Let's go to Golden State at Minnesota. So the Warriors got whomped in the last one, and that's all good and fine. And it wasn't, I don't think, anything to do with Dennis Schroeder. I think they just had a bad game. But we'll keep an eye on that. So Schroeder, is he a top 100 guy? Is he a top 125 guy? Is he a top 150 guy? I think he'll be about a top 100 guy. It might be bumpy early on. That's to be expected. That said, I think he's a veteran. I think he's going to have probably no problem with the passing game of the Golden State Warriors. So we'll keep an eye on that. Buddy Hield's the other one that I'm watching personally. I, of course, think that this could come out of his value, and it's been very up and down for Buddy Hield. We talk about him all the time. I don't want to get into it too much right now, but I kind of think having another scorer makes the entire offense more dynamic, and especially in the case of a Schroeder. I don't think Schroeder's coming in and being like, I got to get my shots. And they're going to tell him, we want you to shoot. But I think he's going to want to move the ball, and a lot of times the ball finds Buddy Hield. That's the payoff, is the wide open Buddy Hield three. And I think that might be the case that we see maybe a little less playmaking stats for Buddy, but what he does is 3.2 triples per game. That either stays, maybe goes up, scoring, accordingly. He's getting his top 110 value right now in 9-cat formats. He's getting it in 23.9 minutes per game. So we have a little margin to work with here, I think is the point for Buddy Hield. So we'll be watching out for that. Don't get into the Pajemski stuff, the garbage timeline. It's nothing, and then you just kind of got to move on from there, as we will. Let's see here. Up next, we got in this game, they are playing the who are they playing? They're playing the Wolves. The Wolves. The Wolves. The Wolves are coming to grips with the reality that Julius Randle's not the player they thought he was. And I'm so tempted to say, and we move on. We might move on. I don't know. I don't have really anything to say about this other than it sucks watching Dante DiVincenzo not enjoy the game of basketball. and I don't think anybody in Minnesota is enjoying the game of basketball. Here's a fantasy angle for you. If they can somehow do something about Julius Randle, and I don't know if they can, everybody goes through the roof. And I'm not breaking any news with that, but maybe you can get ahead of that. This team has expectations, and you have Anthony Edwards. He carries a big weight in that organization, and he doesn't mince words. And if he thinks that Julius Randle shouldn't be there, they might find a way to make it happen. And I don't know if there's a team in the league that he fits on. I really struggle. Maybe a bad team that needs to lose games and needs a buzzy name for some reason. I don't know. Maybe the Washington Wizards. Who knows? That's the thing. That's the thing that would be the rising tide to lift all boats record height. And we move on. Let's get out of there. We're into the Boston Celtics. As Rick said in our last show, there's really nothing to talk about with these guys. Sam Hauser's questionable. Somebody else will probably pop up and be questionable at some point. And then you're just going to move the pieces as they go. Peyton Pritchard, top 55 value on the season. I kind of surmise that Kristaps being now on the floor might actually take a little bit from Pritchard as the year goes on, but I don't think you can actually even worry about that. So we won't, and we will move on to the Chicago side. Now, this side's really interesting. I mentioned it in the top. Josh Giddey is he's out with the left ankle, and that's been a longer-term injury. So that's a bummer because Josh Giddey was doing well for the last week or two and moved his value up on the season to top 135. And that's a really big deal. I mean, it's a 9-cat rank. It's a 2.7 turnovers per game, top 135. So some really big lines in the last couple of weeks. The problems we know. 45.2% field goal shooting. That's not that brutal, but the 71% from the line, the 1.4 combined defensive stats, that's actually, you can actually almost work with that with Giddey. 1.2 threes, though. That's the other big problem. So what you need Giddey to do is you need them to give him the ball and get out of the way. Zach LaVine's all over trade rumors. At this point, Kobe White should be the top guy that you guys are on Chicago, and he ranks pretty highly. If there's a list of top guys to be targeting right now as we're a couple weeks out from the trade deadline, Kobe White's probably, if not at the top, close to the top. He's a guy that slid in drafts to like 90. It was ridiculous. And he's at 85 right now. And that's exactly where Kobe White at a 41.7% shooting mark should be. And it's tough. LaVine, Giddey, they give him the ball to Ayo Dosunmu more. Vucevic is having a great season. So it's easy to get kind of elbowed out if you're Kobe White, but he's too good of a player. And we knew that they wanted to push LaVine early, push Vooch early. This all makes sense. Kobe White, if all of them stay on the team, will bounce back and kind of, if I had to suspect, he'll finish inside the top 50 with his eyes closed if you're looking cumulatively on the season. But then if they trade Zach LaVine, which seems to be at least a 50% shot right now, it feels like it's even higher, maybe like 60, 70% right now. So Kobe White's going to be getting the ball, and everybody else is going to be getting out of the way. Ayo Dosunmu, I think they're already pivoting to get him the ball more. He's a top 105 value on the season right now. Great percentages, not terrible. I mean, it's pretty bad, but not super terrible in three-point shooting. He's 1.4. It's pretty bad, but it's more than you would expect or more than you would hope for a player that's a really low usage guy that's, known for defense. And he's at times been a point guard for this team. And it just feels like they're about ready to give him a little bit more reps. And it's something that Billy Donovan doles out very carefully. And he doesn't really let guys cook until he says you're going to cook. So that and the Josh Giddey ankle stuff, it feels like Kobe and Ayo are your targets. And Ayo has been a first-round producer over the last week or so. Yeah, that's a very small sample size. And that's a high watermark, if not the highest watermark possible. He's not going to do that, but he's showing you that he's capable of stuff. And I think people are kind of almost like he's a waiver wire guy. He's a late round guy. I think top 75 is in his future, and he can just kind of compile his way to that. And even if you look at the tanking potential of this team, it could even get better for Ayo Dosunmu. I'm not interested in Pat Williams. Jalen Smith has been kind of productive once out of every 5 games. So give them a look, but don't jump overboard for them. We got the Clippers at Dallas here. On the Clippers side, Kawhi feels like almost any game now that we could get Kawhi Leonard back. Of course, there will be a ton of news about it. Of course, there'll be a lot of fanfare. Of course, it's going to come out of James Harden's bucket. not so much his, but maybe even Norman Powell will take the bigger hit. Ivica Zubac, he will take a small hit. I think these guys can stay near their current valuations because there again is not a lot of big name value on this team. All of the players that have been soaking up those minutes, the Chris Dunns, the Derek Jones, the Amir Coffees, all these guys, the Terrence Mann, who's out, by the way, he's got about a week or so to go. All these guys, Nick Batum, Kevin Porter, all these guys can slide out of this rotation. No questions asked. And Norm and Ivica, they're still going to get their shots. It's just not going to be as freewheeling as it's been. The efficiencies, who knows? The efficiencies might even cover the volume loss. So that's what's going on the Clippers side. And for Dallas, we're going to see if we get Luka back. Dallas is very easy and predictable. Both Luka and Kyrie questionable, though we did just mention earlier in the show that Kyrie is practicing, so it seems like he'll be a go. Thinking Luka will be a go, but I don't know. So we'll just see them at full strength. There's no real surprises here. I think the most noteworthy thing is the recent slide for Daniel Gafford. He's gone from being a predictable top 100 guy with the upside that we saw last season as a top 75, maybe even top 50 producer. It's just not there. His numbers are way down. It's 1.2 blocks. It should be like 1.6. It's maybe 1.5 even. I wonder if something's wrong with his knee. That's the only thing I got there because everything is very stable for this squad. I mean, you want to put it on Klay Thompson's arrival. You want to put it on Najee Marshall's arrival. That's not paying the bills. It's Daniel Gafford not blocking shots, not forcing his way on the floor for more than 20.4 minutes per game. Sure, Derek Lively, he's on the floor for 24 minutes a game, but there you go. I mean, yes, these guys have been hurt, but neither guy has reached out and said, yeah, I get these extra 2 to 3 minutes that, really put the cherry on top for the fantasy value. And Lively's fine. He's doing top 110 value, sort of what you would expect for a guy like that. Again, not reaching up into the upside that people might have projected as he was shooting a 3 in a playoff game. But, they're fine. It's just, I want to see if Gafford can actually get the athleticism going again and become more of a force and then force his way into more minutes. And lately it's been trending the other direction. So we're keeping an eye on that. Portland at San Antonio. Portland is, hanging in there. They're still a basketball team. We're seeing a precipitous decline for Robert Williams in his performance on the floor. So that is a bummer. He's still a top 75 on the season in just 17 minutes per game, but it's heavily weighted by all those monster games he had early on. So with DeAndre Ayton back in the fold, you got Donovan Clingan back. These two guys are sort of luxury stashes, and it's going to feel bad when somebody else has them. So you're going to try to hang on to these guys as much as you can. But really what we need out of them is to be consistent while DeAndre Ayton's playing. We need Ayton's 30 minutes and Williams to play his 15, 16, 17 minutes and Clingan to also play his 15, 16 minutes and them to not care and them to go big. And it's unfortunately not going to happen against all teams. We've seen it happen half of the time, I would say. So this is going to be tough, I think. And if they don't produce when they're on the floor in these smaller minutes, that then becomes the reason that you got to drop in certain cases. I probably wouldn't do it just yet. I mean, if you have to, you have to. But both of these guys, their per minute upside is through the roof. And DeAndre Ayton, as Doc might say, he's probably going to snow in Portland at some point. He's going to not know how to get out of the driveway. Sorry, DeAndre. That's from Doc. Jeremy Grant's just doing Jeremy Grant stuff. Simons hit a game winner. His fantasy value is sort of in the tank just because of the bad defense and the bad field goal shooting. Good if you need him in the categories he's good in. Denny Avdia continues to be good enough to be a must-roster player. I think he's got either top 100 or top 75 in his future the rest of the way. So his outlook is as good as anybody's on this list. And then Scoot and Shaden, I just generally don't want anything to do with. I don't even think they can be valuable if the two of them are on the same, healthy on the same days. So, and I know that they will be valuable, but it's just too tough to deal with all of their deficiencies and such. Let's get into Detroit at Phoenix. And that is going to leave us with 3 more games after that. Detroit at Phoenix. So Detroit, they are interesting in that Paul Reed gets waived, comes back, and then he's productive again. Well, that's cool. Oh wait, I forgot the San Antonio side. My goodness, how could I forget the Spurs? I'm gonna put a big pause on Detroit real quick. On the San Antonio side, Victor went off. That's great. He's starting to close the gap between he and Jokic, and that's fine. And my heart did sink a little bit when I saw Julian Champagny in his 26 minutes off the bench. Why? I guess Vassell's ready to go. They're ready to make him the starter. Am I worried about Champagny? No. I mean, I think he gets a lot of good looks from the first unit, so that might result in a decrease in production. I think, if anything, this is just a short lull. He's clearly good enough to stay consistent on this team and be a part of their rotation at 30 minutes per game. I think he's earned that, and I think he's good enough for that. So if there is a dip here, it is what it is. But he's been playing at a top 95 level this season, and he's been in every game. He's probably got at least a 1/3 shot at finishing inside of the top 50, probably top 50 in 9 cat leagues cumulatively this season. There's a decent, really good shot. A third shot, maybe a quarter shot, but that's good. There's a guy that wasn't even drafted. He wasn't even in, ranks, or around the internet. So that's great for us, as we've been able to pick him up at the last pick in just about any draft that we were in. Sohan's been good, and I think the big man roles are good for him. I think they're good for his stability. I think they deal with a lot of the problems with his fantasy value. So, I think he's probably a top 100 guy as long as he's in that role. So if he starts kind of getting moved down to small forward, if he starts getting moved to shooting guard or point guard, that's bad. Power forward and center, that's good. So we'll just keep an eye on that. Vassell, he's got to get it cooking, and he's got to get it cooking for a couple games, I think, before people are going to be comfortable with him. He's a top 115 value in the season. So the stats are good, and it's a lot of percentage-driven stuff, so keep that in mind. But, if he can do that, then I think he's kind of off to the races, and he can kind of be a top 75 guy. But until we see that consistency, it feels more appropriate to project him right where he is right now, as a early late-round value with a little bit of upside, some major injury risk, some Spurs risk if they decide to head a different direction this season, which so far they haven't. And I don't think they will. I think they're going to compete at least for the first 2/3 of the season. So that's where I project the Spurs line, so to speak. Chris Paul, been top 50. Chris Paul, congrats if you took the plunge. As usual, it was worth it. Now we can get into the Detroit Pistons, who got Paul Reed back, and Paul Reed had a decent game. Can Paul Reed be productive in a backup role with Isaiah Stewart out? Maybe. He's definitely worth a look as a pickup, a short-term pickup. And if there was a Paul Reed moment in Detroit, it wouldn't be that surprising. But Stewart will be back, and then Reed will be back to the bench. So just take a chance if you want, and then see how it goes. Jaden Ivey's questionable. I think he's questionable for the future in Detroit. That's going to be a really interesting storyline for these guys and what they might potentially get back. And, are they competing for the play-in, and so on and so forth. Malik Beasley's been good again lately, so that's consistent late-round value for him. I think you can kind of put it in the book and send it to the line, ? Yeah, I don't even know why I went there. But, yeah, that's Malik Beasley for you, is a good late-round value when the going's good, and I think the going is good right now, and I think Tim Hardaway Jr. is not going to probably cut into that, I don't think. So Jalen Duren, we want to see if he can be anywhere near the guy that we thought he was. He really was a year ago. It's just those injuries, that size, not good is what it is. Cade's been cooking. He's a top 40 value, and he's a 4.5 turnover per game guy. You really got to get that reeled in. If he wants to be a top-tier player, he's really got to get that reeled in. And maybe he can blame some of it on his teammates, but that number's got to really come down to something in the threes. Let's get out of Detroit, and let's check out their opponent, Phoenix. We're going to talk a little bit about Grayson Allen. Devin Booker, though, possibly, out for a bit with this groin injury. I mean, this is how things roll in Phoenix. This is why I've been so bullish on Grayson Allen. It's not that Grayson Allen is the greatest player, and I think he actually took a step back this season, gaining all of that weight, which is unfortunate. But that's what he chose to do. And if he got all that weight and he was able to keep his quickness, it's a super smart thing for him to do. And if they went and they said, hey, we need you to play power forward, Grayson Allen, it was a super smart thing to do. But if it was, I'm just bored in the gym and I want to see how big I can get, that's not paying the bills. But at the same rate, both he and Royce O'Neal have been good. Royce O'Neal has been better than Grayson Allen. So to me, he's the better of the two to have on a roster. But Grayson Allen is the guy that has shown it in the past that he can really be a top 75 per game producer and finish inside the top 50 and do it without the injury risk or the age risk that Royce O'Neal presents. But they do, I think, like Royce O'Neal better than Grayson Allen, just as a player, as a fit for this team. So he's definitely between the two, and he's been a top 60 guy over the last 5 games, hitting 4 triples per game. So Royce O'Neal, I think he's obviously must roster, and he's just somebody that you probably would enjoy on your roster. Now, Grayson Allen's been a top 110 guy over the last 5 games. He had a dud in there, driving this number down. He had a great game in the last one. He's hitting 2.6 triples, 1.4 steals. These percentages are actually low in this sample. His shooting regression positively is the thing you knew was coming, and that's why you knew that Grayson Allen was going to be back on the board as a fantasy relevant producer. Late round guy, I think, kind of at minimum going forward. I think he worked out some of the kinks with the Achilles injury and then getting back up to game speed. And I do think they're actually going to integrate him into the offense even more. And then you get the upside if Booker gets hurt, if Durant gets hurt, Tyus Jones, anything ever happens to him, I think that's probably a gold mine. He's not going to get hurt unless something random happens. Of course, Jimmy Butler could be arriving in this situation as well. And I think that would hurt these guys. But you'd be replacing Bradley Beal probably in that equation. So there is a little bit of absorption by that. It's not going to completely wreck everybody else. But Jimmy's a guy that likes to hold the ball. And that, I don't think, would be good news for Royce or Grayson. That trade ain't happening. I get in the chat here. Maybe there's, the John Gambadoro is the guy in Phoenix that I will listen to until the cows come home. And he outlined that basically it's very unlikely. It feels like it could be likely, but like in terms of the return, I guess the thing that makes it possible is you just know that ownership is all in and they're ready to, as they have, mortgage the future, which is actually a really relevant term for their ownership. What do we got? What's left? We got Houston at Toronto. Well, how about this? Thank you guys. I want to thank you guys again. It's the holiday season. And just to let you guys know, if you guys want to support us, if you guys want to go to sportsethos.com, check us out, consider subscribing to the product. When we did the B150, the reason that we could do the B150 in the middle of the season is because all of our tools have gotten so much better. And these tools, they're Vegas grade tools. They are tools that it's not just sort of like, set it and forget it kind of stuff. The intel that goes into making the B150 has been installed in these tools, and these tools are monitored by myself, by other people here at Sports Ethos that they're gamers. They understand this stuff. It's the game within the game kind of stuff. So check out our tools. If you haven't gotten a membership already, consider getting a membership and check out everything we got going on here at the website. Our vision with things is to keep adding value for our subscribers, the people that are looking for free content, listeners, followers. And we want to keep employing people. We want to keep putting money into this industry. So much money is going out of this industry. We want to keep putting money into this industry. So all of your likes, subscribes, you check out our products, you check out the free stuff, you check out the paid stuff. All of that helps us out. So thank you very much for, sitting there and listening to all of that blather. Let's see. We got Houston at Toronto. We got 3 more games and 5 more teams. Oh, and download the app. Sorry. I can't believe I'm not shouting that from the mountaintops. This app is something we've wanted forever. And shout out to the team that put this thing together. Get the app. It's free. It's free. And then you don't have to hit the For You tab. Unless you like the For You tab. And then I got some side eye for you. If you like that For You tab, I don't know. I'm kidding. I love you all. What do we got? Houston at Toronto. Houston is the Tari Eason absence. It should not mean so much, but it does. Like, is he hurt again? Is this injury stuff, is it back? For a top 50 producer in a low minute role on a team with a lot of players and a guy that was seemingly just cutting through all of that noise and being super consistent every single night. Now it's all at risk, it feels like. And maybe that's over dramatic about it. But missing a game with all of that time off and the so-called break, maybe they just want to get ahead of something. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's big or small or in between, but Tari Eason is, kind of caught my attention here with this squad. Not much else, though. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. Fred VanVleet's not going to have the season that he had last year. He seems to be the loser in this equation. Could he bounce back and be Freddie from last year? Maybe. The odds of that seem to be like 10, 20% at best. Amon Thompson had a slow one, so if you can try to go get an Amon Thompson offer out in the last, because of the last game, you could do that before this game. That would probably be pretty wise. He's set up for a big second half of the season. Are they going to trade Jalen Green? That was a no about 3 weeks ago. And if they meander and they don't have that toughness and they don't have that swag and they just kind of get bad over the next couple of weeks, I think that equation might shift. That's all I'm watching for on the Houston side. Toronto is, full of question marks. They got questionable Jakob Poeltl. They got questionable RJ Barrett, questionable Davion Mitchell. Quickly. Is he going to return quickly? I don't know. I think he's probably going to return in the next week or two. But they got kid gloves with Quickly. That's the thing about Quickly that, as I was ranking him in the B150, it's like the numbers are great. Everything's great. He could just take the ball and run. And, they want it now that they've actually not been able to use him all year. They might want to use him more in this tank of a season. But it's just, the first nick or bruise that comes up, they might just be like, nah, we're just not going to do it this year. So I don't know. With Quickly, there's a risk reward quotient there. Abaji is doing just fine. I don't know what to say about Abaji other than I think you can pick him up when you don't see something great on the wire, and then if you see something great on the wire, you can drop Abaji, and then in the last third of the season, he might actually go off. Or he might just cruise at his continued, his current top 100 level. That's a 9-cap format, so keep that in mind if you're playing in other formats. So that's a late round guy. I think he's a late round guy at minimum, and then you can kind of maneuver, and you can count on it. If you drop him, he'll just be sitting there as Ochai Abaji. Barrett chucking it up. No surprises there. Efficiency is the issue, but certain formats, that's not going to matter. Poeltl, keeping a close eye on him. And then Kelly Olynyk, he actually crept up a little bit in the last game. It wasn't like mind-blowing Kelly Olynyk stuff, but it was actually decent. So I think he earned a little bit of additional grace with folks as we travel through this awkward, Kelly O period here. Ochai Abaji. Thank you very much, Andre. In my long mountainous road of learning to say player names correctly. Thank you very much, Andre. My what's the guide that goes up the mountain? Anyway, next game. Yeah, no, I get it. Mobo getting a lot of minutes. Can he convert them into fantasy value? That's a very tough question for him right now. There was a Boucher sighting. It's a really, really, really messy team. Okay, next game. I think we can all agree that we need to get to the next game. Tyrese Halliburton is going to be in Sacramento. So talking about what if the Kings lose to the Lakers again and then they lose to Tyrese Halliburton at home? Heads will roll. It will be messy in Sacramento. So look for them to go out there and kind of shut that down. And who knows with Tyrese? He went 4 of 9 on all of his shots were threes the last game in what would look like a bad game, but because it was all threes, he gets you 4 3-pointers in that game. And that's sort of the underbelly of his fantasy value is that he can have a bad game and still make it good. So he's been better, and we want to just see the consistency continue to roll in. And then Benedict Mathurin, can he be more of a top 100 guy versus the top 125 guy he is on the season? You're seeing Siakam and Turner start to pick up the pace a little bit. I don't see anything of value, kind of floating around. I'm not trying to get on Andrew Nembhard or Aaron Nesmith. I think each of these guys kind of get in where they fit in, and we'll see if they can be consistent. And then, and only then, would you make a move on that? Lastly, Denver, who is very boring. Denver is very boring, and you only have Šarić right now on the injury report. So probably at full strength. It's probably more interesting to talk about what would happen if they actually got Zach LaVine. So Zach LaVine, if he shows up in Denver, I think that would kick Russell Westbrook's value to the curb. Peyton Watson's value is already at the curb. Aaron Gordon's value would go to the curb. I think there just wouldn't be enough basketballs to go around. He's a top 150 guy this season. Christian Brown probably settles into a truly late round value. He's been a top 75 guy on the season, but starting to fade into 100, 125 over the last month or so. And then Porter, I think, The interesting piece there is that he might be on his way out. Pardon me. But that's very speculative. I don't know if they would want to get rid of Michael Porter Jr., but I don't know how they do a deal without, having something to give up. But Jamal Murray would take a hit. And I think if Levine lands in Denver, he would actually either hold value or maybe take a small hit. I just think being able to take passes from Nikola Jokic, he would make it up in scoring and threes and a field goal percentage, and that would be great. Okay, that's it. Those are the games. I'm going to stay on and answer a few questions. The pod feed will probably wrap up if I had to guess. So I'm going to go ahead and close the show up. But if you have your questions, go ahead and submit them online. Also, you can get into our Discord. We take the questions from Discord. A lot of the premium subscribers in Discord will get preferential treatment, so, you might want to go buy a membership, but make sure you guys subscribe to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast. You guys never miss an episode. We do content specifically for each platform, so you want to make sure you're signed into each one. So follow those platforms at Sports Ethos, at Ethos Fantasy NBA, and I can get you to the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to that. Hit the thumbs up button wherever you can. It just helps us out. Thank you guys very much. That's going to do it. The show's been presented by Bet Online. Thank you to our producer, Andre Lemouche. Thank you guys for being a part of this journey. Let's build something great together. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, be well. Okay. All right. Questions are on the screen. Daniel Paisley. We got your name figured out in the last show. Thank you very much for that. Daniel Paisley says, is Caleb Martin going to be serviceable tonight? Maybe. I don't feel great about it. I'll say that. I think he's, even when the going's good, it's been iffy for him. And I don't know if he's, if it's a health thing or if maybe even like getting out of Miami where there's such a good system and into Philly. And let's be real. And sorry for anybody who's watching the show out of Philly, in the front office, yada, yada, yada. It's like this Philly organization is not a model organization. Miami is a model organization. So I don't know if that has something to do with it, but I would say it's probably about a 25% chance that he's serviceable in this game. So those aren't great odds. What else we got? Joseph Kim writes, with both of these centers ramping up, who would you have for the rest of the season? Derek Lively or Mark Williams, 9-cat? That's a great question. Probably Lively. Like 80% of me says Lively. But if I'm in a situation, pardon me, where I need upside and I need to reach up and get more of I don't think it's likely that Lively gets to top 75. I really don't. And the deficiencies and punts and builds and all that stuff, that could shift this discussion, whichever way. But all things equal, I don't think he gets to top 75. I don't really think there's even a chance of it. So if you need top 75 from your big man slot, then that's the 20% of me that says that Mark Williams is the guy. We got a big trade offer happening. Jarrett Allen, Josh Hart, PJ Washington is one side of the deal. And then we got Evan Mobley and Shadon Sharp. Okay, so I'm going to call Shadon Sharp a 0 in this deal. And we're essentially saying we want to take 2 early rounders, 2 consistent early rounders, and a PJ Washington that's hanging on to a top 75 number right now. He's probably a top 100 guy this season. For one, Evan Mobley, who I love so dearly. Look, if your top 40 producers in this case are, being replaced or you bring them in and you have a couple top 75 guys that could just fill right in. Let me see if I can reframe that. Basically, you take Mobley and then all of a sudden you got to play guys that are really bad, more like top 100, top 125. That makes me want to keep the Jarrett Allen, Josh Hart side of the deal because those guys are locked in, ready to go. And then PJ factors into this as well. But if you are sitting on a stack of players, your league's got a lot of guys that produce in the top 75 range available, and you're going to be able to replace Allen and Hart with top 75 producers, then I think the Mobley side of this deal would be something I would hang on to So figure out your format and then make the decision accordingly. But value wise, this is a lot for Evan Mobley. As much as I like Mobley, it's a lot. Matt Carmody, shout out Matt Carmody. Thank you very much for all of your support. Would you trade Scotty Barnes and Monk for Jalen Williams and Hartenstein? So we got a Barnes and Monk for Jalen Williams and Hartenstein. It's funny. I was thinking about it there and I was thinking about it. And I was like, I'm not thinking about this anymore. It's Jalen Williams and Hartenstein. Like, they're going to be great regardless. They're healthy-ish guys. I mean, Hartenstein's got a little bit of wear and tear. Monk could easily, and I think we might be seeing the beginning of this process, could be heading back to the bench. And how that all goes, I don't think they should have given him the starting role, because now when he gets inevitably benched, it's going to be bad for morale. Unless he buys in. If he buys in, that's not true. But Barnes, it kind of feels like he's snake bitten this season. He did recover quickly for this thing, but at the end of the year, with the risk in the Toronto side of the market, that's Jalen Williams and Hartenstein for me. What else we got? Steve Sloan says, I got an offer for Christian Brown for Fred VanVleet. Christian Brown for Fred VanVleet. He's been killing my field goal percentage. I got quickly coming back. Is this worth considering? Do I need more back for Freddie? And yeah, you do need more back for Freddie. It's great. Whoever did the offer, that's a really good offer. Because, like you look at the ranks and you look at this and you look at that, and it's like maybe it seems even. It's like, oh, I'll get the young player who's, had some big poppy lines to start the season. And the impression people get early on is often the impression that they keep for longer than the reality is, especially when talking about the potential for them to add a Zach LaVine. Freddie VanVleet was a top 10 guy last season for a lot of it, and so if he gets right, just with what you want to do with this is keep Freddie VanVleet on your radar. Anytime he has a big game, move those trade offers out, and maybe even try to do it kind of preemptively, and hopefully the big game hits while that trade offer's out. There's a couple different ways you could play that, but yeah, I would wait on that. Don't do that deal. What else we got? Big thank you from Matt. Thank you back. Adam Guntharp says, please tell me Kawhi's return won't upset my fantasy team. I have Harden, Powell, and Zubac. You and Doc. Yeah, I think in terms of like big player, big pieces, like, look, if this was Julius Randle, and I know I go off on Randle all the time, but if this was Randle, I'd be seriously concerned. So therefore, like, Kawhi would be a disaster, right? But no, Kawhi, yeah, he's on the ball a lot, and yeah, kind of stand and watch Kawhi stuff, but he's an efficient overall basketball player. It doesn't take from the morale of the team, and then I do think it puts these guys into positions of efficiency. Zubac might take the biggest hit of this bunch, so watch out for that. But Powell, I don't think he slides past top 75. I don't think Harden loses like more than a round tops. And with Harden especially, his efficiency is terrible. So I think he might not lose more than like a couple slots, like 5-6 slots. And then you have the risk as well. So keep the faith. You're good. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate the cool comment. Admiral Nita, what's up? Better stash Bub Carrington or Scoot-a-Loot? I don't like Scoot-a-Loot in fantasy leagues, and I'm concerned about his trajectory as a player. I'd like to see him in another location. I'd like to see a team scoot on in and steal him. I think the better stash here is Carrington, and it's for the reasons I said earlier in the show. So go ahead and stash Carrington and not Scoot. What we got? Joseph Kim says, I traded Randall for Quickly in 12-team 9-cat. Great job. Did you lose or was it okay? Soft punting the turnovers. And no, man, this is great. Like Randall in a 9-cat format, almost a late round guy. I mean, maybe he can, get out of his own way a little bit and stay possibly tucked inside the top 100. But, and I know his value translates better in head to head, which is this format, I'm guessing, soft punting the turnovers. So yeah, I mean, he climbs up, top 75, top 50. But I really think there's going to be a reckoning in Minnesota with what they've done here. And you got the ownership groups fighting for the control of the team, and it's a mess. And are they going to punt an entire season and piss off Anthony Edwards that way? I don't think it's possible. I really don't. I think he'll just call him out publicly and then that'll be that. But as far as Quickly goes, he can be top 50, and he's on his way back. Yeah, maybe you get burnt a little bit here, but if things, there was a game that Randall had the other day where he played 24 minutes and the Wolves won and they were great. And I kind of think the way that maybe if they can't trade him, the path out here is to say, look, you're not a part of our future. We're going to play you for 24 minutes per game off the bench. And if you want to get a bunch of shots off, do it from the bench and then stay out of everybody's way and run back hard on defense. If you don't do that, then you're not playing at all. Do they got the stones? I don't know. Admiral Nita says, thank you. I say thank you back. Prince Fountain, Sexton for IO, 12 team, 9 cat. I think it's IO. You know, if you had asked me this a month ago, it would have been Sexton, but Io's shown more. He, to me, has the higher upside. I think with Sexton, what we've seen out of him as a player, this is his plateau. So there's this hidden value in Io if they let him turn the corner, if they let him take the ball, if they let him do the things that they've never let him do. I mean, maybe that will adversely affect like percentages or field goal percentage in specific, but I think your assists go up. I think his scoring goes up. I think he might even get more active on defense. The Billy Donovan effect is something I would like to study in greater detail because he has this very specific way. It's almost like he cultivates the box score. And there's other coaches that are exactly like that as well. So I want to look more into that in future seasons as we tend to do in the offseason. Joseph Kim says, thank you. I say thank you back. Prince Fountain says, appreciate that insight. And I appreciate you guys. That feels like it's the last question. I don't know. What we got, Andre? We got dead air. Well, let me just fill it with hours of Keon Ellis talk. This is the Keon Ellis fact, the Keon Ellis hour. He says we're done. Okay, guys. Thank you very, very much. Have a great holiday. Be safe out there. Call a driver. Do all that stuff. Enjoy the holiday season with yourself, your family, others, you know, just and have fun here at sportsethos.com. We love you. Enjoy the break, and we'll talk with you guys on Monday. Oh, actually, we've got one more show for you tomorrow. That'll be cool. And then on Monday, I'll see you for the 30-team review. This has been Fantasy NBA Today, presented by Bet Online.